Hello and welcome to the Paul Bunyan podcast. I'm your host Chris Zorbis here with my friend Adam Berger. And today we're talking playoffs. The playoff committee has a whole host of issues on their hands. A lot of teams have lost. There's no undefeateds, no clear-ins, no clear-outs. And we might even see a two-loss team in the playoff for the first time in its young history. This year's playoff is going to rely heavily on the results from the championship games, and we have a few play-in games. So we'll get started with that. First off, we'll start with the conference that matters most. We'll start with the Big Ten, Ohio State, Wisconsin. What do you think about that one, Berger?
I think this is going to be a really classic Big Ten game. Wisconsin has an incredible defense. They don't make many mistakes. But don't sleep on their offense either. They have a running back in Jonathan Taylor who's rushed for over 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns.
Wisconsin's always got good running backs.
Wisconsin is a good team. They do get disrespected a lot. You could argue until they played Michigan, they didn't have a signature win, and that Michigan team only had 8 wins. Wisconsin has all of this game to prove. Ohio State also has a lot to prove in this game. They fought back. They have two losses to Oklahoma and to Iowa.
They got whipped in Iowa.
Iowa did get destroyed in Iowa, but they came back strong, whooped Michigan State.
They did.
They beat Michigan in the game in Ann Arbor. And J.T. Barrett is looking like one of the best quarterbacks in college football this year.
He really is. It's funny, actually, you mentioned Wisconsin getting disrespected. Right when we were opening it up, I talked about how all the teams were losing. I forgot to mention our one undefeated in the whole country. Or no, there's 2 undefeateds, but our one Power 5 undefeated is actually Wisconsin, and no one seems to talk about them. I think that's partly because they've had a very, very easy schedule. I mean, I'm pretty sure in the regular season they only played one ranked team, and that was Michigan. And they got that game at home. They somehow avoided Michigan State. They avoided playing the defending Big Ten champs in Penn State. But here's a 12-0 Wisconsin team sitting right outside the top 4, playing an Ohio State team that's going to get a ton of credit from the playoff committee. So really, Wisconsin's got it all right in front of them. Really, if I'm Paul Christ, I'm telling my Wisconsin kids, hey, win and you're in. Doesn't matter with disrespect, doesn't matter the rankings. If we win this game, if we beat Ohio State, we're going to get into the playoff. Ohio State, though, they have every bit as reason to get into the playoff. I mean, you look at their resume. They beat Penn State in a thrilling game in the shoe. They trashed a good Michigan State team, and they took care of business against the Wolverines again. So Urban Meyer's probably sitting there saying, look at these 3 teams I've beaten. Look at the 4th team I'm going to beat. How can you hold me out with 2 losses?
I think this game really is a winner goes to the college football playoff. And as we'll show later in this show, all 4 of the Power 5 conference games, save the Pac-12, are really all buy-in games. Obviously, if Wisconsin ends the season undefeated, they will be the number 1 or number 2 seed.
You can't keep a 12-0 Power 5 team out of the playoff. That'd just be absurd.
It won't happen. And Ohio State, with 2 losses, if they beat this game, deserve to be in the playoff. They would have beaten an undefeated Wisconsin. They would have beat Michigan.
Trashed MSU.
Michigan State. Penn State.
And Penn State's a very good football team, too.
Their only losses come to Oklahoma, which may also be in the playoffs.
Yep.
And that, I'd say, once-in-a-lifetime whooping against Iowa.
Yeah, I don't see Urban Meyer ever losing like that again at Ohio State. The one thing I will say that bodes well for the Buckeyes is they have athletes all over the field. Wisconsin they're just not like that. Wisconsin's almost like the no-name team. You know, they have a very good quarterback in Hornibrook. They have a very good offensive line, but they don't have a whole lot of stars on their team. They remind me a lot of the 2015 Iowa team that was 12-0 going to the Big Ten championship. They ultimately ended up losing to Michigan State, who went to the playoff. But it just sort of screams disrespect because they've had a little bit of an easy schedule. They can validate that all on Saturday at Lucas Oil Stadium.
I think if Wisconsin wins this game, the whole country, the media, deserve to give Wisconsin an apology. There's not many people picking Wisconsin. In fact, Ohio State are the 5.5 favorites for this game. Point favorites. But Wisconsin's undefeated Big Ten team. They shouldn't be underdogs, but they are. And that's what's going to go through the minds of the Wisconsin players. They know that they're an undefeated Power 5 team that people think are just going to get beat by Ohio State.
So who do you think wins?
I think in the end, Ohio State wins this game. I think Ohio State has the skill. They have a better quarterback in JT Barrett. They have a better coach in Urban Meyer. And I think the overall quality of Ohio State will beat Wisconsin. I think Ohio State will win the game by 14 in the end.
Really, eh?
I think it's going to be kept close for the first 3 quarters, but I think in the end, Ohio State is a better team overall, and they'll prove that.
I agree.
In the game.
I think Ohio State's going to win it. I don't think it's going to be much of a blowout. I don't think they're going to lose, or they're going to win by 14, I should say. I could see Ohio State taking it by a touchdown or a field goal. At the end of the day, I think with JT Barrett, J.K. Dobbins, and Mike Weber, they just have too many weapons for that Wisconsin defense to contain. And that Ohio State defense, they look good against Michigan State, and they look good against Michigan. So I just don't think Wisconsin has a horse to compete in that one. Our next game up is the ACC Championship, the U and Clemson. That game might just be the best championship game on the slate.
100%. If I could only pick one game to watch this Saturday, it would definitely be Clemson versus the U. That's going to be an incredible game. Both teams really want this bad. Both teams only have one loss.
And really weird losses, too.
It's true, Clemson was blown out, really, by Syracuse, which was obviously a freak. And then Clemson did get this, and the U got a big upset by an incredibly well-coached and pretty talented Pitt team.
Well, even the U lost by 14 to Pitt, so it's not like they lost in a close one either.
No, the U got slapped, and I think this was a wake-up call for their players. They had a huge game against Notre Dame. The turnover chain came out. The hype was there, and they beat Notre Dame. After this, they had their sights set on Clemson. They didn't even think about Pitt. Pitt knew that.
Pitt thought about that.
Pitt was thinking about them. This was Pitt's bowl game because they're not bowl eligible. They only ended up
Exactly.
winning 5 games. Pitt came in there. Actually, the U went into Pitt, and Pitt won that game, and they won it good. So the U, their players right now, they're definitely realizing that they may have overthought it, but I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. I think they're going to be all in on Clemson, and I think the U will play big rebound coming.
Well, despite both teams' odd losses that you touched on, they're both sitting there again, 1 loss each, both near the top 4. Actually, are they both ranked?
They are both ranked. Clemson's the new number 1 in the AP poll.
Well, even in the playoff poll from last week, they're both 3 and 2 respectively.
100%.
So you're sitting there with 1 loss. Again, this ACC championship game, it might as well be a playoff game.
I agree. Again, I think with both teams only having 1 loss, and both of them not being good losses, so you could almost say these 2 teams are even.
Yeah, both of them were upsets, exactly.
But while the 2 teams may be even, that's not necessarily so in the games they played. So I'm going to read you this interesting statistic. So both Clemson and the U played Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Georgia Tech this year. These are all not good teams in the ACC. So Clemson's combined margin of victory in those 3 games was 45 points, while the U's was only 23. The U has been unable to put up big wins this year, which was their knock before the Notre Dame game, which is why they were never ranked so high for being undefeated, sort of like Wisconsin. So Clemson really has the advantage coming in. They have a much better resume. They've beat a lot of ranked teams this year. They may have beat 3 or 4 ranked teams this year, if I'm not mistaken.
The U?
Clemson.
The Clemson, yeah. Well, the ACC, they play a good schedule. The U played Notre Dame. They played so the ACC and Clemson, the U, they always play in good teams. It's never an issue with that. Who do you think wins?
I think if you look at the advantages, Clemson has the experience. They were there last year. Dabo Swinney's an incredible coach. Their defense
Dabo Swinney's a great coach.
Their defense is one of the best in the league. That being said, 2017 is the year of the turnover chain, and the U is winning this game definitely by a touchdown or less. It'll be a close game. You're going to see the turnover chain. You're going to see Clemson get some turnovers. I think Clemson's a better team, but I think the U will win this game just because this is their year. I think the U will make it to the college football playoff this year.
I'd love to agree with you. I think the turnover chain, it's a great thing. I really love it. I like what the U is doing this year. I can't wait for the 30 for 30 on it 40 years from now. But I'm going to go with Clemson. I think Dabo Sweeney is a great coach, and like you said, they've been there before. I know they lost Deshaun Watson, their quarterback, but Kelly Bryant has obviously played some kind of football to get him back into this position. And when you talk about the Clemson Tigers, they don't flinch. And I think that's a really big deal. I think part of the thing with Miami and the whole turnover chain is they have some of that swagger back, some of that intimidation factor. And I just don't see Clemson falling for that. And I see Clemson coming out on top in a very, very close game. It could easily go either way, but I think Clemson's going to take it and get into the playoff. Next on our docket, we're going to go out to Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship. They're taking on TCU in a rematch of a November 11th game in which Oklahoma won 38-20. Does TCU have a shot at the playoff if they win this game? Because we know Oklahoma, if they win, they have a shot at getting in. They have a decent chance. But what about TCU? What's TCU's motivation for this game?
I think feasibly, TCU has a shot, a very small one, to make the playoff.
They would need a lot of help.
They would need a lot of help. They would need a lot of certain dominoes to fall a certain way. TCU could make this, but this is really a game for Oklahoma. And this is a game for Baker Mayfield to show that he is a Heisman. Because he very well may be the Heisman winner this year. Baker Mayfield, this is his last year at Oklahoma. He's become so close to lifting that all-important trophy, the College Football Playoff National Championship. He's been unable to do it. He had a very talented team last year. He's another very talented team this year.
Well, it takes talent to go into the shoe and win.
100%. They've already beat TCU once this year. I just don't see TCU being able to keep up with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, you know what? That's totally fair. I think Baker Mayfield's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, if not the best quarterback in college football. If I were an NFL GM that needed a quarterback, I would be licking my chops waiting for this guy to finally work out in Indianapolis, and I'd love to see him work out in my team's compound. The one thing I will say about TCU is they're not a team you can count out easily. Gary Patterson plays some great defense. I guarantee they're going to give Baker Mayfield a lot of looks he didn't see in that November 11th game. They're going to switch some things up. I guarantee that. I will say this about TCU. I don't think they're going to win. I think Baker Mayfield is just too good. But I do think TCU will make that game so much more difficult on Baker Mayfield than that November game.
I think what you're going to see is a good old Big 12 throwing bonanza. I think both teams are going to score a lot of points, and it really will, in the end, it will come down to which offense can score the most points. Because both teams do have a solid defense as far as Big 12 teams go. Gary Patterson plays good defense.
He might be the best defensive guy in the Big 12.
I think he may be one of the better I think he's definitely in the argument of being one of the best. Same with Oklahoma. They have a workable defense. They wouldn't have beaten Ohio State and gotten this far without a workable defense.
No.
So it's really going to come down to which team can throw it the best, and I think Baker Mayfield is obviously that guy.
See, I'm going to go polar opposite with you. I still think Oklahoma's going to win. But I'm going to say this game's going to be low scoring. I think everybody knows what Oklahoma's strength is, and it's Baker Mayfield in that offense. And you're going to see Gary Patterson do everything he can to shut that down. I think for the most part, he's going to at least take off some points. I mean, are we going to see another 38-20 game? Are we going to see a 45-30 game? I don't think so. I think Gary Patterson, if they're going to play it close, they're not going to play it close in a shootout. Gary Patterson's going to try and keep the ball, going to keep Baker Mayfield off the field. I think that Oklahoma's going to win in a 24-10 type of game. Our last one is the SEC championship game. This one is a play-in too, and a rematch of a game that happened just a couple weeks ago with Auburn playing Georgia at the Georgia Dome, which might be a significant home field advantage actually for the Bulldogs now that I think about it. That stadium's brand new.
It's going to be in the brand new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The Georgia Bulldogs will have an incredible advantage when it comes to that. And they have their duo running game back with Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel. With both of those running backs out there in the Georgia Dome, this will be a big hometown advantage feel for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, it's funny. Georgia was undefeated for the longest time, and then they welcomed the Auburn Tigers to Georgia. and took an L. The Auburn Tigers, meanwhile, later, they went off and beat Alabama. So this game is crazy in terms of, how often do you see a rematch of two teams this good, back to back almost, like the way they are? I think this game is going to be unbelievable.
How often do you see an SEC championship game without Alabama?
That's
I'm
a good
excited
point.
just for that. I think Auburn shocked a lot of people when they beat Alabama. They shocked a lot of people when they knocked off a then number one Georgia. They've knocked off 2 number one teams this year.
In a 3-week span.
In a 3-week span. Because Auburn did not look impressive beginning of the year. They lost to Clemson
Yes.
early on.
Clemson's not a bad loss, though.
And was that their only loss?
No, they also lost to LSU.
They also lost to LSU.
But that was in Death Valley.
That was in Death Valley in a rivalry game. But I think there's no team hotter right now than Auburn. They've knocked off 2 number one teams. They knocked off Bama, which
Auburn
in itself...
Auburn always seems to get hot at the right time. I mean, you look at the last time when they beat Alabama in the SEC championship. They beat Georgia off that crazy Hail Mary. They had that kick six. They're always a team that Gus Malzahn seems to get his team peaking at the right time sometimes.
Gus Malzahn always seems to do a good job of winning the big games when it matters. I mean, he has not beat Bama in a while. The last time he beat Bama was that crazy pick six game. But he can always pull it off. And I think the main reason for that is Jarrett Stidham is the best quarterback that Gus Malzahn has coached.
I agree.
At Auburn.
Totally agree.
Jarrett Stidham, I think, is an incredible talent. And it shows. I mean, they beat Bama.
Yeah.
Would they have beat Bama with who they had last year? Probably not. Jarrett Stidham can do that.
I agree. So, who do you think wins with the playoff on the line?
The playoff, again, I believe the playoff is in line in this game, too. And you have Georgia. They got beat by Auburn pretty bad, and they want this game big. They're at home. They have Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel, 2 running backs who are going to get drafted into the NFL, but they're not going to win this game.
Isn't it great to see Nick Chubb play a healthy full season? I
It
have to
is.
touch on that. Nick Chubb has been probably one of the best running backs in college football for quite some time, and it just seems like he can never get a full 12 games in. It was great to finally see him finish the season and play to his potential.
It really was, and he's an incredible player. He'll get drafted very high, has much talent. But as I was saying, Auburn will win this game. Jarrett Stidham is an incredible quarterback. Kerryon Johnson is an incredible running back. That Auburn defense is something else. And that team that just knocked off Bama will be able to knock off Georgia again and go straight to the college football playoff.
I think this game's tough because these two teams know each other. I mean, they were just watching film on each other a month ago, and Kirby Smart, former defensive coordinator at Alabama, now the head coach at Georgia, he's been prepared. He's been trying to stop Gus Malzahn's offenses for quite some time. So these two guys know each other very, very well. These two teams are going to get to know each other very, very well. The one problem I have, I want to say Auburn's going to win. I want to believe it's their time. The only thing is, it's hard to beat a team twice. Georgia is a very, very good football team. They got smacked by Auburn in their house a couple weeks ago. They're not going to be ready to lose again, and they're gonna really, really be wanting to win, and they're gonna know exactly what it takes to win. I think before Auburn went into Georgia, was anyone giving Auburn any sort of chance? Auburn didn't really have a lot of respect. They were a 2-loss SEC team. They were going to lose to Georgia. They were going to lose to Alabama. They beat Georgia, and things changed. So I think Georgia's going to approach Auburn with a whole different mentality, and I think I don't think they're going to lose again, especially to the same team. So I think Georgia's going to take that one just because they lost to Auburn earlier.
I think there's only one thing for certain this Saturday is that all 4 of these games are must-watch, can't miss. Whichever game you decide to watch, 1, 3, 2, or 4, they're all going to be incredible games. They're all games that have playoff implications, every single one of them. No one is sure who the Final Four is going to be. After Saturday, once we see the winners of all these games, the Final Four will be clear, and it'll be interesting to see who will be there, because really no one knows at this point.
Yeah, this stands to be one of the most interesting selection Sundays in the young playoff history.
For sure.
People have been clamoring for it to expand to expand from 4 teams to 8 or more. I'm one of those people. I'd like to see it expand. However, with only 4 teams being able to get into this year's playoff, it's real exciting as a spectator. And one thing's for sure, I don't want to be in that playoff committee, but I would love to be a fly on the wall while they're picking. This Saturday, great for college football. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.